The gaming landscape varies in both scale and scope, from AAA titles which get this name due to the budget and polish generally associated with them, and these are made by hundreds or thousands of employees. Examples of AAA games are all over the place, and they come from the likes of Activision, EA, Ubisoft, Capcom, and the console manufacturers themselves. On the opposite side of the coin, you have indie titles, which grew in popularity in the PC space before finding a home on consoles in the PS3 360 generation, due in part to the rise of digital marketplaces. Indies themselves are a strange bunch. You have some games which are made by a single person, and others which self-fund and have grown into major players in their own right, competing for our attention with the big boys of the industry. And in the middle of these two extremes are AA games. And they get this title by being made by companies with significantly smaller budgets allocated to make their games. Now, AA was huge back in the day. The PS2 and PS3 generations in particular are where my mind goes whenever I think of AA, with titles like Psyops and Destroy All Humans. But with the death of Midway and THQ, the well seemed to dry up. The rising cost of development meant publishers focused their efforts on finding success in the mainstream AAA space, and with how easy it is to publish onto PSN on the Microsoft Store, indies flourished like never before. There simply wasn't an appetite for AA experiences, or so they thought. Flash forward to 2023, and we have a new contender in the AA space, Scars Above. Developed by Madhead Games and published by Prime Matter, Scars Above released on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC on the 28th of February 2023. Now personally, I've been keeping an eye on this one since its reveal trailer in August of last year, mainly because it reminded me of Returnal, which is one of my favourite games from this generation. So when I was offered the chance to review the title, I jumped at it. So after spending 9 hours with the game and earning a platinum trophy for my efforts, this review I'm going to break down what works, what doesn't, and ultimately, if it's worth your time in such a stacked 2023. And don't worry, for this review, outside of a few boss encounters, I'm not going to spoil the story. Now let's dive in. Earth. The near future. Humanity no longer ponders the question, are we alone in the universe? As a giant alien structure arrives in Earth's orbit. This metahedron is our chance to make contact, and so the Sentient Contact Assessment and Response Team, SCARS, are sent above the Earth to do it. Wait a second, SCARS? Above?
Oh, no, no, no.
This team are made up of Kate Ward, a specialist in biology and mechanical engineering, Mike Yoshida, the team physicist, Tamara Coleman, the physician, and the commander of the mission, Richard Robinson. As the shuttle approaches the alien structure, power is suddenly drained and the crew find themselves being pulled into the metahedron itself. Kate is flooded by visions of an alien world, and as she opens her eyes, she realizes that these visions are now reality. But why has she woken up alone? And who's this ghostly spirit that wants to guide her? This mystery is only the tip of the iceberg, as while searching for the crew, she stumbles upon a makeshift shelter and realizes they've been here for months. So why did she only just arrive? And what is happening on this twisted world? It's with these set of questions that drives Kate's story throughout Scars Above. Told through cutscenes and the odd audio diary, I'm glad to say that across the approximately 6-hour runtime of the game, the story is very effective. It doesn't blueball you and save things for a potential sequel. It doesn't leave things open to interpretation. It delivers a tightly written, satisfying tale, wherein you learn the answer to every question you could possibly have. And in drip feeding the story through a traditional linear model, it can be paced efficiently to keep the audience engaged. Now, with as good as the plot is, it's unfortunate that when it comes to its cast of characters, I don't feel they are utilised to their full potential. We get background on them, but we don't get enough time with them for their characters to become anything more than paper thin. Outside of our spectral guide, which stays with us throughout the entire story, the rest of the cast pop up here and there, say a few words, and then disappear for you to take on the next area of the game. And as such, their characters don't have an opportunity to develop. And all that means is that I couldn't care less about any of them. The joy of the story here was in its mystery, and the characters seem to be there just to give Kate a reason to find the next MacGuffin. By focusing the plot on moving from area to area at pace, we don't have the time to make these characters feel like a close unit. And this means that we as the player don't feel the same urgency that Kate does. She may be fighting to save her crew, but I wasn't. I was there to learn why this was happening. With some added time to get to know the crew and form an attachment for them, the plot could have conveyed a sense of loss when things don't go to plan. It could have created emotional moments which burn the characters into your mind, that make them feel essential pieces of the overall experience. But that is sadly not the case, and they remain nothing more than pawns of the plot, rather than active participants in it. Leaving the story to the side, the gameplay here in Scars Above is a jumble of a host of different influences all melded together to form something which is both immediately familiar and yet manages to create its own identity. If I had to describe it in a sentence, it's a Dark Souls-style Metroidvania. Playing as Kate, you move through areas using a variety of weapons and gadgets to bring the smackdown to a host of alien monstrosities. Now, as you explore, you'll encounter pillars. These act in the same way as the bonfires from Dark Souls games, wherein resting at these will refill your resources, your health, but it will cause any enemies you defeated to respawn. To offset frustration with this, you'll uncover shortcuts to these pillars, which will enable you to push on through new routes without having to constantly do battle through the same stretch to get that little bit further. Now, with Dark Souls, this system is exceptional, as you have to balance pushing forwards with the risk of finding yourself out of heals. The environments in Souls are large, and so each shortcut you find creates an instant dopamine rush and a sense of relief in what can be a challenging experience. The influence is clear as day on Scars Above, but unfortunately, it can't quite match the blueprint FromSoft have laid down, and the reason for that is twofold. For one, the environments are small, and you never seem to go far enough to make the shortcuts feel earned. And secondly, the difficulty isn't balanced properly, and I blame that solely on it including a difficulty option. In Souls, every player has a set difficulty which cannot be changed, and it means they can cater the difficulty to be a challenge where every death feels like a kick in the nuts, and this in turn forces you to get good. Scars Above does what critics have been begging for since Demon's Souls. It adds a difficulty option. Choosing between Rookie, Specialist or Commander, easy, normal or hard, you will have an experience tailored to that choice. Now, I generally start games on their medium setting, and here, that bit me in the arse. The game was far too easy, and my lack of concern in taking on groups of enemies meant I never had to revisit a pillar and respawn them. I was able to continue to explore without a care in the world. Now, granted, this is an individual issue, and there could be any number of players who find medium a worthy challenge, but one area where the difficulty pacing drops off a cliff is in your gadgets. As you move through the story, you'll gradually unlock new weapons and gadgets which are used to move through environmental roadblocks, and provide new ways to engage with the threats in your way. These gadgets turn you into a force of nature. Early on, you find an energy shield which will protect you from several hits before it depletes, and it's a godsend for the early bosses, which can be challenging. But as the game goes on, you gain the ability to slow down time in an area, to create holographic decoys, and even a super speed teleporter which you can use to move effortlessly around a battleground. Combine all these together, and you can straight up bully any boss without any effort whatsoever. Now don't get me wrong, it's fun as hell to combine all these abilities together and beat the living shit out of an enemy, but it isn't challenging. Now when it comes to using these gadgets, they rely on a battery meter, and I guess that's supposed to be the trade-off. The more gadgets you choose to use, the less meter you have for future battles. And that would be an effective trade-off if you couldn't refill it. But you can. Exploring the environment all by killing enemies, you'll find resources. And these come in two forms. Either ammunition for your guns, or fiber.
Strawberries are packed with fiber.
Fiber is a wonder material. Anything you need can be made using it. Health injections, ammunition, and even recharging a battery. So I bet you're thinking, well, thank God this miracle resource is rare as hell, right?
Wrong!
It's everywhere. I always had a full bag of it, and I wasn't even going out of my way to collect it. So with this resource, it means you can spam gadgets on any enemy you feel like. You have essentially unlimited ammo, and if your health somehow runs low, you can just make more health injections. And all this means is the game is substantially easier than it could, and more aptly, should have been, which in turn undermines the importance of shortcuts, pillars, and overall level design. And is such an own goal. What I would give to have run out of resources.
Permit me a demonstration. This is your body without fiber.
Now, even with the difficulty being so uneven, the thing that kept me hooked throughout the entire game was its combat. Kate starts off with a single gun which fires electricity, and this is soon added to with ice, fire, and poison. And it's in using these with the environment or with each other that you can earn bonus damage and layeth the smackdown. Some examples of this: you could coat them in ice and use this to conduct electricity. You could poison them and then set them alight. And if they're standing in water, well, it's time to throw in the toaster. With everything kind of being based around elements, it's like a demented version of Captain Planet.
Water.
Fucking poison.
Go planet.
Every new weapon you encounter gives you license to experiment, to find combinations in tandem with the environment to efficiently exterminate the mutated scum that wander the planet. And it never gets old, especially in its boss fights. These encounters are incredible. Some are just straight up brawls, but others are a puzzle, utilizing mechanics taught earlier in the area to ensure you've paid attention, and it's in figuring out their weaknesses and exploiting them that the game comes to life. One boss makes the water a death sentence, and so to avoid a grisly fate, you need to shoot ice blasts into the water to create walkways, all the while avoiding his attacks and keeping a sharp eye on what he's destroyed to ensure you can move in a pinch. In another, the boss is impervious to damage, but by freezing all 4 of his legs in a puddle of water, you can expose a weak point and take him down. The imagination that went into these encounters is fantastic, and really brings to life the lessons you've learnt along the way in the same vein that Metroid or Zelda does. I found them a real treat, and they are certainly the high point of the game. Speaking of high points, the soundtrack. I've tried to include a number of them to add some ambience to this review, but I can't do them all justice. The 80s sci-fi vibes resonate in every track, mainly due to the soundtrack's reliance on synth, which as it rises fills the game with nostalgic charm, bringing life to areas that otherwise could feel drab. At times, it's haunting, while others, it beckons you on. As I played, there were several occasions where I was stopped in my tracks to try and savor it. It's sublime. Now there's one final element of Scars Above that I'll talk through on this review, its upgrade system. By killing bosses or finding research nodes scattered around the environment, you will earn points that you can use to level up Kate. These are the usual affair you've seen hundreds of times before: extra health, less battery use, and an increased chance to not consume items on use, that kind of thing. The good news is the game gives you the ability to reset your points at any time, so you can try skills out, and if you feel like you've invested in the wrong ability, you can simply reallocate it to where you see fit. In practice, I didn't find a reason to ever redistribute, and as the research nodes are abundant across the game, by the time you finish, you'll have to be avoiding exploration entirely to not max out the skill tree. And it's a shame then that I never found a single ability game-changing or impactful. They are small additive benefits that all add up to provide passive bonuses. They work well enough, but there's no builds or strategy in what you pick. And so this means my Kate is the same as yours. And this, coupled with a lack of New Game Plus, results in the game lacking replayability, as every experience will be the same. So, as we look over the entire experience, is it worth your time? Well, yeah. I know I've given a lot of criticism here for systems which aren't fully realised, or resource management which turns what should be a challenging game into a cakewalk, but the long and short of it is the plot is engaging and the gameplay is fun. Scars Above may not have much in the way of original ideas, but what Madhead Games have created here is a type of game you'd play over a weekend and walk away glad you gave it a shot. And as we look to the future, I'm hopeful the Madhead Games will have the opportunity to follow this up with a sequel, as I'm sure the lessons learned here will make the next entry that much more compelling. In a year where every game on the horizon is the next big thing that threatens to take over your life for hours and hours on end, it's nice to have a palate cleanser where it's just entertaining to play and nothing more. And that sums up AA Gaming. They never were contenders for Game of the Year, but they had a feel about them, a charm which permeates through the experience. And if you choose to play Scars Above, I'm sure you'll find that charm translate as you uncover the mysteries within. And that's it for this review. If you enjoyed it, put a like on it and consider subscribing to the channel. Have you played Scars Above? If so, let me know your thoughts on it. I try to respond to everyone on my channel, so I'll look forward to discussing it with you. Up next, I'll be returning to the USG Ishimura for a review on Dead Space Remake, so I'll look forward to seeing you back here soon. If you're still craving a bit more from me, consider checking out my podcast, In PS We Trust. It's a PlayStation podcast where me and my co-host discuss the latest news, rumours and hype for all things survival horror and PlayStation. You can find it on all major podcast services and right here on YouTube. I'll put links in the description. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. See ya.